Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
I like doing a lot of different things. Maybe that's just like upbringing, but a lot of it I know is to do with the fact that I'm neurodivergent and having that kind of creativity and not being able to like stay still for too long in the same thing. Like I need to be stimulated. So like being able to like do all these things is something which is like a part of my personality.
Hey, welcome back, Dirty Freud, to the Creative Condition podcast as he joins me to talk about variation and evolving a creative career. It's a hot topic as the world shifts through many, many changes. We need to move on our feet because we now exist in a world where we can wake up and find out that a piece of technology has robbed us of a stream of income. We're going to get into all of that. What does it mean? What are the pressures? What are the opportunities? And how have we evolved over the years? This is the Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? Welcome back to the show. I'm so sorry for the week off. That was a hosting issue, a rare glitch in the matrix, if you will. And that's the first week that I've missed other than Christmas break for, I believe, over 2 years now. So forgive me that one, please. I had to go off the radar. I did have one lined up, but there was something. It's boring, but I'm back. And I hope you're well. I hope you're good. How have you been? How are your creatives? Are you feeling inspired? Are you feeling doomy? Are you feeling gloomy? Because it's all good, valuable material that we can use to make sense of this strange existence. Quick thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, Illustration X. You can check out their stunning global range of illustrators and animators and artists of all kinds at illustrationx.com. They also do a lot of great work supporting the creative industry, including backing this show for over a decade. You can't ask for better trust than that. They do a lot of work with the Society of Artists Agents and the Association of Illustrators and the likes to protect our IP. So check them out, illustrationx.com. Please do consider having a look at the Ukrainian Institute. They're doing incredibly important work to support the embattled Ukrainian creative community over at ui.org.ua. You can share, you can commission, you can support them in any way that you see fit. But please take a moment to do just that. So welcome back. I'm going to be coming into a bit of a new era for this show soon. I'm thinking of the way I'm going to frame it. Maybe I'm going to do an episode asking you guys what you want from this podcast, because I love doing it, I love producing it, but just lately I feel like I'm wandering in the dark a little bit and I feel like I need some concrete direction. What do we need from this moment? Because there's so much uncertainty and so much flux. Maybe it's about how we're coping in this moment. Maybe it's about thriving in an automated world or creativity in an automated world. I'll land on that new subtitle, but I want to frame it a certain way. It's not going to change too much. I'm still all about the broad remit of what creativity is, talking to people far and wide, from athletes to doctors to filmmakers to designers to dog painters, theatre people, you name it. Firefighters. I've had firefighters on the show. Athletes. Oh, I already said athletes. You get the idea. So today I'm welcoming back Dirty Freud, a long-time close friend and collaborator of mine. You might remember him from Champagne and Wax Crayons. He contributed to that, my debut book. Spent a lot of the time in that book living with the guy as we found our feet creatively. We founded Quenched Music, a project that no longer exists and never really went anywhere, but opened so many doors for us creatively because we just went out there fearlessly under the guise of a music company and helped musicians and worked in the industry, and we just learned so much. It's where I started interviewing. It's where I started writing. It's where Danny started making music. Danny Skerritt, of course, is the man behind Dirty Freud. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. We're going to talk about his recent segue into opera and electronic. I don't know. I've lost the way. There's so much stuff these days. That's why I wanted to get him on and talk to him. I think it's going to be helpful for you guys, because I think we all kind of need to be thinking about course correction and how we evolve in these times, because it is pretty terrifying out there. You know what technology is doing, and it's not something to be utterly terrified of. But I think it's definitely something to use as a stimulant to think about what is your story, what is your personal story, what are you best positioned to do that is dripping with humanity that others cannot, because we've all got a unique story. So that's what this chat is about today. If you want to coach with me one-to-one, there are opportunities. I have the flagship pit stop session, the big deep dive, where we get into all of your current picture, your frustrations, your blocks, your opportunities, your origin story, your skill set, and then we look at the broader remit. It's like a forensic, I almost said autopsy then, your creativity is not dead. Forensic audit of your creativity. We'll go with audit. No stone unturned. We look at everything. So get in touch. I also do shorter one-to-one sessions. You can book a block of those. I do a story program where we work together for you to write your story, whether that's in book format. I've been working on biographies with the likes of Hector Ayuso, founder of Paradiso and Off Festival. I've got another one coming up soon that we'll be able to talk about before too long. And I'm working on story coaching at the moment. I'm helping somebody write their talk. Very, very exciting. I love getting my teeth into people's stories. So if any of that sounds good, check out thecreativecondition.com/coach, or just drop me a note and we can jump on a Zoom call and have a conversation about that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this conversation about variation and evolving our creative careers with Dirty Freud. Oh, and I also just want to acknowledge and apologise to the audience. My microphone somehow was not being read, and I didn't know about that during this conversation. So I sound a little muffled in this one, I'm afraid, and I'm sorry about that. It's workable, it's not too drastic, and I hope you'll persevere, because this is a great chat with Dirty Freud. But I know now you've got a hell of a portfolio career. So in front of me, I've got opera, production, mixing, mastering, live, new music, youth work, writing for others. I mean, that's just a starting point. Give us a rundown of what you're currently up to.
With age and with children comes different like things. So like I love the band. I love working with Dirty Freud. Like Dirty Freud, as you know, started in our flat, and it was like a DJ project to start with, and then I got into production, learned a lot of that. Then I started lecturing as well, and DJing, and then producing, and then the more and more I did it, the more and more my skills were growing. So like it ended up becoming like a band project with myself and Ruby Tingle, and so I was still DJing, but it was like a live thing as well, where I was like playing keyboards, using like samples, like singing as well, as you do, and then we got Jono, who plays sax, and then Rob played guitar, and that was when we did our first tour of the States, which was, still blows my mind saying that we toured the United States. Not a big deal, but yeah, it just still blows my mind. But it was never enough for me. I was like, I love this so much, and I've always been such a huge fan of music and like the sounds that people make, and I've always felt like I've always been greedy. I've always wanted more, and then fell into the world of jazz. Like there were some incredible jazz artists who were using like electronica and things like that. Like massive fan of like Flying Lotus, Thundercat. Like these were all people that I was like exposed to at my time at Ninja Tune as well. And this kind of happened after like I collaborated with like John Moore and Matt Black, like Cold Cut, like the founders of Ninja Tune. And I like started a relationship with a Manchester Jazz Festival, and started writing electronic jazz, which has again like helped the sound and kind of shaped the sound into like more like songs, I guess. And and that gave me even more confidence because then I was like, wow, like I wonder if I could get into other things like writing for film, writing for adverts, writing for opera in the end. And like, you know, I co-composed an opera with Charlotte Marlowe, and it was a combination of classical music, traditional operatics, electronica, and jazz. So like a bunch of different influences, and yeah, and it got its world premiere in Luxembourg. Did 2 days in Luxembourg. It's going to be premiered in London as well in the summer. So it's exciting times, and yeah, and that's kind of led me to where I am now. I'm like writing for like I'm writing for Sony. I'm writing for Warner Chappell, like Universal, Stellar Music in Denmark, like writing for other artists. Wrote a few tunes for like Willie Mason's album, which was beautiful, and yeah, composed like this new hip hop album, which is out on Warner now. So yeah, man, it's all good. It's all good. I can't complain.
You know, there's an aspect of this that I want to get into, and it's personality, because I think you and I have both had similar paths in that regard. Obviously, you alluded to it there. We started Quench Music when we lived together in Manchester,
Yeah.
which was, I don't think we ever truly knew what it was, but we just knew that we wanted to work in music, and it was a vehicle that we created for ourselves to get access to places that we might not have otherwise got into, because at the time you come from a theatre and playwright background, and I, you know, was an illustrator, still am an illustrator, among the many other things. But I think that that appetite that was always there with us, I think as far, I mean, I know for certain with us, it's kind of a big part of it is personality. We're quite extroverted by nature. We love being around people and that kind of the contagious aspect of creativity. But for the reason I'm asking this is for the kind of for the listener. I don't want. I know some people might feel intimidated by the nature of the industry as we know it today, where things are changing at a crazy pace, and that there's a certain pressure to diversify and to tap into that broader skill set and personality because things are changing and certain rugs are getting pulled from under people's feet.
Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah, I think this has to be looked at through the lens of personality to a large degree. If you're a very different kind of person to us, let's say on the other end of the introversion extroversion
Yeah.
spectrum, then the idea of doing all of these things might just completely crush your soul. It's just like it's not for everyone, is it? This, I mean, I guess the question is, is a big part of this appetite of yours to diversify and bring in that range to do with who you are and your personality?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if I like doing a lot of different things. Maybe that's just like upbringing, but a lot of it I know is to do with the fact that I'm neurodivergent, and having that kind of creativity and not being able to like stay still for too long in the same thing. Like I need to be stimulated. So like being able to like do all these things is something which is like a part of my personality. And I like how varied it is, and I like that I don't have to rely on just one like thing to like get my fix of creativity. You know, I love working on different projects, and I love making music, and I'm just, you know, I feel very lucky that I get to work in different genres, you know, where either I'm writing for myself or I'm writing for someone else or I'm writing for like a new theatre piece, you know, the music for that, or I'm writing on an opera, doing music for like adverts. So like I just love like being a part of it. If that, as crazy as that sounds, I just love being a part and like yeah, mixing with different people. But like I would definitely say that like I've been lucky doing that like independently before AI came in, because that was one big thing like which happened, and for me like it didn't really affect me. It it kind of like for me it gave me more opportunities because my music is like so like it's unique what I do, and maybe it would have been like passed on as too unique, at one point, but now with like AI, the I've landed these kind of roles where I am writing for people and they're like, oh, it needs to have that human touch. And that's yeah, that's really helped me in that response. But like I think it's one of those where you can, if you don't diversify, I guess it it can be like you're undoing, because it's here. AI is here. There's no getting away with it. Like the genie's out the bottle, and if you just do like one thing, especially if what you do is really formulaic. Let's say like I know a lot of pop writers who are incredible writers, and but again, it's very formulaic, and AI is very good at picking up very formulaic. And some songs that I've heard, I've been like, that sounds like a good pop song. And someone will be like, oh, that's the new AI artist. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, that is crazy. Like I would, maybe I'd listen to that. Maybe I'd have it on in the background. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like being able to diversify, and or if like your music's like metal, or if your music's like jazz, stuff which is improvised, very human, very emotionally based, like you're still going to be okay. It's like those ones who like have maybe just studied pop for like songwriting, and that's all they do. So I think like having a few strings to your bow isn't isn't the worst thing, especially in nowadays.
Absolutely, and that ability to operate in that space in between. You know, I'm working with a designer at the moment on his biography, helping him write his biography, and that's the title of the book, The In Between. And he talks about that because he's got a very he's never settled anywhere. He's lived in New York for 13 years, as the longest he's spent anywhere. But there was a lot of migration in his family patterns growing up, and in terms of his creativity, he's always operated in between many disciplines. You know, that curiosity leads him, I guess, much like it does us, where there's great joy in just seeing what might happen if we bring this and that together and work that puzzle. In your circumstances, I'm interested, you mentioned neurodivergence. Is that something that you have to be mindful of and manage? I don't class myself as neurodivergent, but I probably sit on some spectrum somewhere. You know me well enough to know that. You know, I've got a very lively brain. And as I found out last year, as I've talked about on this show, feeling more anxiety than I've ever known in the past, I think a lot of that there was down to mismanagement and disorganization.
Mm.
And that's the downside of doing all of these things. Is it something you have to manage? Is it something that you have to take care of? But that mental battery.
Oh yeah, mental battery, absolutely. Like, for me as well. Like a long time, I ignored it. A long time, I was just like, ADHD was something that I had in school. It's gone away now. I'm fine. It's all good. I'm managing. And like, but you get to that point where you do burn out, or like you are like, you're not you're not being honest with yourself. You're like, oh, do you know what? I can do this. I can take this on. I can take that on. I can do this as well. I can also be the perfect dad, and I can also have the perfect career, and I can do all these things, and I'm never going to get it wrong because I am solid. And and then you do get to that point where like it all gets a bit too much. Things drop off your plate because you're concentrating, you're hyper. That's one thing that I do. One of my symptoms is like hyper focus on something. So like I'll be like, right, I need to get to all my kids' events. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And then suddenly it'll be like, I'll have an email being like, oh, how are you getting on with such and such? And I'll be like, haven't even started it. Nice
Mm.
one. And I think like me doing lists, me using like the calendar, which like beeps at me until a task is done, like that really helps. Like putting stuff like all around me so I can see where I need to be, what I need to do. I think as we were talking earlier, like organization is a huge thing for me now. Like being able to, I'm not perfect, but I am so much better than where I was. Like I've got notebooks, I've got like pads on like the doors. I know where I'm supposed to be. I've got people reminding me, and I've never been one of those where like people like reminding me. I take offense. I don't take offense. Like, tell me where I need to be. you know, I'm totally up for all of that. So like the more I think like now that I lean into it, like my life is a lot happier rather than me being like having some form of like shame about it and
Mhm.
feeling oh they're gonna feel that I can't handle it if I ask for help. It's okay. Ask for help. It's all right.
It's really, the older I get, the more I recognize the importance of asking for what you need, whether that's within your family dynamic from a partner, for example, or even from your kids, as parents, some mornings, particularly when I was feeling rough, and I hated to do it sometimes, but I'd sit down and go, I just need a moment, like, can you play with something for a minute? Because I didn't sleep last night and I was anxious as fuck. And it's just like, oh, but I think that's really healthy because then people they see that you're human, and it makes it easier for other people to come forward and acknowledge those things too. So, and actually, I think it's better. Everybody sort of wins from it, whether that's professional, personal, or whatever else.
Sure. Like definitely it's like I just feel like in the past 2 3 years, probably 3 years, I'm just in a better place. I take the first Monday off in each month as a me day, and take myself off to the cinema, take myself off to a little cheeky lunch, treat myself. Maybe I'll get a cheeky massage as well. But it's all those things which I'm like, you've earned this. you know, we've done some miles, haven't we? And now it's time to like, be kind to yourself. It's all right.
Yeah. And I can't speak for you, I speak for myself and I speak for other observations, but I've noticed this through my coaching practice. People who've had some kind of, whether it's adversity, ongoing adversity, challenges, or scarcity in their early life, there's a real tendency there for a core belief to be formed, which is I've got to keep going, got to
Yeah.
keep going. I must work harder because it could go at any moment. It, and not reaping the rewards of the groundwork that we've laid. I see it all the time. I'm currently helping one coaching client in particular to overcome that because he ended up, he's in the States and he ended up in their, emergency like over the weekend because he just didn't take his foot off the gas and going and doing everything. And it's like, come on, you've got to work on this. Like, where does it end if you don't? You're doing well now. Like, you've got to, one day off a month is not a big ask, or it shouldn't be.
Not a big ask. And I think it's one of those as well, especially when you're building and building and building. When I first had the kids and like I was with like my co-parent at that point, and it was definitely like I was just pushing, pushing, pushing. All I wanted to do was make sure that we got to that point where like all of us would be okay. And of course things would fall off because it would be like, I must take this opportunity because it may not come again. Or I've got to do this gig because again, it may not come again. Or like, and you'll know it yourself, especially at that point, you have to say yes. You have to keep saying yes, or something inside you is like, if you don't say yes, they'll just go elsewhere. And then you get to that point like now where I'm just like, I'm not going to reply because I'm done for the day. And and if it's there, beautiful. But like more times than not, I'll email that person or I'll ring them back at another point, and the job's still there.
Mhm.
Rather than that fear of, oh, but what happened? But they could just get someone else if I don't do it. Oh, I'm gonna have to sacrifice this. I'm gonna have to sacrifice that. No, no, no.
Yeah. Well, saying no is one of the biggest, most important things you can do. Like the art of saying no and knowing what to say no to is critical. Do you do you have a compass of sorts these days? Like, do you have? I don't mean in respect of one big goal as such, but like, do you have direction in terms of? Do you have how do you know what to say no to? I guess is my question. Like, do
Mm.
you know what you're moving towards, or are you or do you respond to the opportunities as and when they come in? Like, I needed to get some focus, and I sort of have. Again, it's variable. I keep it variable because things change all the time, and there's a lot of a lot of flux. But I do have core focuses now, and I do have a lens through which to put the queries through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the time, like I'm focused on either writing, my band, the record label. Like those are like my three things. Like where I'm like, this is where I sit, and that leaves room for like for instance, when I do work, like I've just done some work with mothers against knife violence, and like that just jumped into my like inbox, and I was like, of course, I'd love to be in that, or like, you know, doing a talk with other with other send kids who like suffer, you know, who like have autism or like do have ADHD or have been excluded from usual curriculum and school. Like, I'm okay with that. Like those are pretty much like knowing where I sit now, like professionally, means that I can like do one-on-one sessions with people who are younger and are probably going through the same sort of thing of like, where do I sit? Why can't I concentrate? why am I struggling? And it's like, well, you know, you're wired slightly differently, so this is why we do this. And everyone's like journey with like being neurodivergent is different. You know, everyone's got different symptoms, so it's like just being there and showing them that there is like a place for you in this like crazy world.
Yeah. It's about being intentional as well, isn't it? Because you know, as there's a lot of fear out there in many ways, but particularly the economy and everything else, and we're all to a degree slightly freaked out by that, especially as freelancers. It's kind of second nature, you know. We're always looking for where that next bit of work's coming from. But I found it takes real resolve. I'm getting better at it, to have the trust that actually we've survived this long. We do have a lot in our tool belt, and it's okay to go through a quiet spell. It's okay. Maybe it's not. It never feels okay, but it is, and it has to happen sometimes. And that's where that inner compass and course correction comes in. I don't really know where I'm going with the question with that, but it's, I don't know. Like variation can be a killer if it's scattershot.
Yeah,
If it's just everywhere, and that's where I was going with it. But yeah, the intentional side of it, you sort of have to know. Self-awareness is huge as well, isn't it? You know, it's knowing that when things land, it's like, am I doing this because there's money on the table and it's an echo of some former version of myself? Or am I doing this because there's money on the table and it fits into what we just talked about, that lens, that filter, that sort of self-awareness enough to go, no, actually, here's my circle of competence, and it does land within that. And I do have time, and it does make sense, because it's tough to know that sometimes.
Absolutely. Like I'm going to be 100% honest. I used to really struggle with being asked to write for other people, and like being asked to like do things which weren't in my usual genre. Like I wrote a folk album recently for like Warner, and it was good, and like, you know, money was good, and I really enjoyed it. But I was like, am I allowed to enjoy this? Am I selling out? I am an electronic artist. but and for a long while I was just like, oh, I'm not sure if this is okay. And then just being at peace with it now, just being like, you love making music, and this gives you the chance to not only create like something different which you would never be able to put out as Dirty Freud, but being able to like have it like in a different realm, touching like a different listenership who would never ever go near what you write usually. And it's just like, and being honest as well, like after I wrote that album, I felt energized to write like my personal stuff, and get that stuff ready. So I feel like it always like galvanizes what I'm doing. I'm like, oh well, we've done that. That's been good, and that's quite like brief. You know, I'm writing to a brief, and then I come back to like doing the Dirty Freud stuff, and I just feel at ease. I feel good.
Do you know? Yeah, that's something really important there, and it's about using that energy across all the things that you're doing. Because I spoke to a number of people, and that one common thing that's come up in conversations is, I think it was Nick Asbury, who's a Nick's a brilliant writer, writes his own stuff, but he also writes for advertising campaigns and things like that. And he talked about how he's he's better on his own stuff when he's commercially busy because he's in that headspace to be driven and focused. So then when he gets like a 20-minute window while he's waiting for amendments, for example, he's fired up. So he'll turn to his own stuff and he'll be far more efficient and focused on his own stuff than he would be if he's just got all day to do it. Because
Yeah, for
we're
sure.
all we're all at risk of falling into procrastination when that happens.
Yeah. No, definitely. I would echo that. Like, I think as well, like having kids, like for me, like I don't take like 20 hours doing doing all types of things, walking around the garden, going for a random meander. Now it's all very intentional. If I do go for a walk, I plan it in my day.
Yeah,
and like I'll be like, okay, cool. And then I need to pick up the kids at this time and make sure we're all good for their activities. But and it means that like I've got a cut-off point for work because there have been times, especially when I've done like residencies, like writing residencies, where I'm like, oh, I've got all day. And 8 hours have passed and I'm still counting, tadpoles. And it's just crazy. Sometimes I definitely need like that focus.
yeah. To flip that on its head, like how do you how do you implement the time, given that you're a dad of of two and you've got this hectic schedule and doing all these things? How do you find the time for that necessary reflection and ponderance that comes, let's say, with a task like writing for yourself? How because that becomes an operation in itself, doesn't it? To find a window of time to actually just let your brain go into that default mode network, or
Mm.
just let the solutions come to you. Do you find, I guess the question is, do you find time for that?
I think like I've just had to, like especially like sometimes when I'm driving on trips. Like I'm very lucky again where I get sent to different countries to write, and there'll be some. I'll hear someone talking. I'll hear like a wild story, and I'm like, that is a wild lyric. I'm gonna write that down, and I'm gonna chuck that in a song, or like and I still, as I said, like I definitely think it's great that I have to take like that one day off, like at the start of the month, like and then there is a lot of procrastination, and I like it, and I'm like, you've earned this day to do what you want, this free hit day, and doing what we do as well. Like sometimes I'm waiting for clients, so I'm like, you know what? While I'm waiting, I'm just gonna go for a little walk, or I'm gonna do this, gonna do that. But like a lot of inspiration as well, like comes from my kids. They say some wild stuff, and I'm just like, that's great. I'm gonna have to steal that, and or just watching them like play in the park. I'm just like, I usually go with my sketchbook and like write some stuff out, and I'm just like, this is a good day. It's so I think now I find my moments and I don't take them for granted anymore. I'd say that's the difference. I don't take it for granted. I'm like, oh wow, anywhere we go, like even like kids parties, I'm like, I'm gonna take my like pad because this is gonna be intense.
Yeah, absolutely. You just never know. And as we know, we spent 5 years living together, and those many of those song titles and the likes would just come from the incidental.
Yeah,
I remember messaging you many times, something like a newspaper headline, or something that just doubled
yeah,
up with something we were thinking at the time. And that's where I think for any creative now, especially in today's world with automation, you have to remain responsive, and you have to have your eyes up. You have
yeah,
to be looking around. We're all guilty to some degree of being on our devices a lot because they're designed to do that and anchor our attention. But you have to allow that unconscious to do its thing and just be aware in the world around you. Because, like you say, it is something a person says or an observation that only you could make with your wonderful and unique story. That's where the real creativity comes from. And I think that's where the value is going to stay as things get more and more automated.
yeah, sure.
We've said, I remember I had a coaching client recently who'd come from Hollywood, and that industry's kind of capsized, or at least the way it used to be. And I think the streaming platforms now mean that there's no kind of back end royalties, or certainly significantly less. So for in his words, middle earners are really struggling because they were the ones who relied on those royalties from writing for shows and the likes. And the way he described it, he said to me, he calls it the wasteland playground, which I loved. Um,
Ah,
and he was like, we have to get in the wasteland playground. And he was like, he said to me, he said, here's a laptop, go figure it out. That's what a creative industry career can look like now, you know?
absolutely. It's crazy. Like I'm just always glad that I like took took like took a lot of time to like play, find my sound, and just really just enjoy what I do. And I think like I'd say that to all creatives, like never forget to play. Like play is just so important. Like just experimenting and throwing like there are times where I'm like, I do this like quite a bit now, where there's just no pressure. I go in the studio and like I'll just throw some stuff about and and a lot of the time I'm like, ooh, I'm not too sure about that. But then I'll come back to it like a week or so later and I'll be like, oh, there's actually something in this. and, you know, be that 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a phrase or something, and then I'll work on it properly. But like, you know, being able to just have understand and this comes from me as well because there was definitely I put a lot of pressure on myself. Every song does not need to be a hit. Every song does not need to get radio play. Every song does not need to be the best thing you've ever created. You know, I don't and I don't know why we do it to ourselves, but that was definitely something. It wasn't coming from anyone else. It was coming from internal, like, oh, you've written better. You've written better. Nah, you've written better.
Yeah, that inner critic's a real thing, and you do have to work through that. And you say there about playing, yeah, it's vitally important. But I would also caveat that by saying it's also vitally important to remain curious and engaged with things, with something. What are you excited about? I ask this about every coaching client. What are you excited about? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are the things that you're putting into that big pot in the back of our minds that gets jumbled up and comes out in some ridiculous new idea where something from your childhood or some script you had has come together with this thing you read in a book. And if you're not doing that, if you're not staying engaged, and not just staying engaged and being curious, but also expressing that and sharing that with others, because I don't know about you, but I've found with this variation thing that the big leaps tend to happen when I share something and do something that I'm excited about, and then share it with people confidently and at least as confident as I can be. Share it with someone in as much as here's a thing that I've done. I think there might be something cool about it. That's how the fiction started. That's how the fiction has now led to biography writing for me. And all of these things where people look at it and go, how the fuck have you ended up doing that? And I will go, I say to people, well, I don't know, but I did it. I showed it to someone. They had a cool idea, and now that person's commissioned this thing that I never dreamed of. That's what happens, isn't it? It's a constant unfolding of these things that we're all excited about.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I never, so, you know, doing this opera, I thought, I always felt like, on seriously, this is what I was doing. Like, they'd say something like they'd be like, oh, Danny, do you know, like, where the aria comes? I'm like, give me 1 second. Literally going to the toilet, going on Google, what is an aria in opera? Like reading it, coming back and being like, so it's so important, blah 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 blah. Like, and it's finding a language of like how you work and like being able to be like not just confident with it because like most people will be like, oh well, you know what you're talking about, so let's just crack on. And like loads of people want to be creative, you know, they don't want to be doing the same thing all the time, you know, or it gets like pretty stagnant. And like I'd say like doing that first opera has definitely made me feel like I'm able to do more. And now I'm doing something with Birmingham Opera Company, which is like a huge opera company. And you know, I could never see myself doing opera. And now I'm like, oh my, I'm going to be working with one of the biggest opera houses in Europe. It's crazy. Um, and that'll be a great project. And then I'll be able to go back to like writing songs with the band, and it's gonna be lush, you know. And I think just having that, I realized that I definitely need that balance, like being able to like do what I want and 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 write what I want as well. And I think other people may have seen that in me, like, my mentors in the past have seen that in me, been like, oh, I don't ever see you as the type of like artist who's going to be like on a major, and that used to get to me. I remember being like, how can you say that? I feel really talented and I feel like I've got what it takes. But it was just like, that's not what they meant. They meant like, they know the fact that I love like bouncing from project to project, and like being like tied into a contract and not being able to do all of that kind of thing was never in the cards for me. Whereas now, I work with different indie labels, and I'm still able to like work with like majors now, but always from like an independent capacity.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, and you also, there's something you said there that makes me think of contradiction. They say that contradiction is a huge trait of people who sustain their creativity. It's that, it's that we can be in a room with 100 people buzzing at a gig or whatever, but then the next minute we need to be tucked away watching some anime show, in silence. It's like we sort of need bits of all of it. That's what the creativity kind of feeds from that variation. Is that true of you?
Yeah, oh for sure. Like I love being tucked away watching anime or manga, like comic books and stuff like that. Like especially like after I've done like a huge run of shows, like the last thing I want to do is like be in a room with lots of people. Like
Yeah.
it's like, and that's part of it, and I feel like when I wasn't really dealing with like my ADHD, I'd mask a lot, and I'd like go out, do lots of things, and I'd be absolutely knackered afterwards. And I'd be like, why am I so tired? And it was because I'd been like almost performing out there and chatting and talking, and I was just tired at the end. And now, like, I recognize that I'm like, well, your social battery is drained, my friend. Now it's time for you to take a seat, put on the box, and just dive in, just indulge, and then recharge that time for myself, and then go at it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that again, it's that self-awareness of getting slightly older as well, isn't
Yeah, absolutely.
it? Um, I don't think that, interested in your thoughts on this, but I don't think it's a prerequisite so, it's not it's not a demand that we have to be varied and doing all the things. I think that there's a certain pressure that people might feel when they see others doing that. But what I do think, and it's something you said earlier, it's about that how are you telling your story. If you're going to be a specialist in today's world, you really have to find that niche and tell a very human story, because of, like what you said about earlier with AI. I wholeheartedly believe that now. We're entering a time now where what can be automated is probably going to be automated,
Yeah,
legally or illegally. We all know about the whole scraping thing of many artists' work and the rest of it.
yeah,
We know that's going on left, right, and center. So I think if you're going to specialize in today's world, then I think you have to find the right connections. You have to find the ecosystem for that, and I think you have to truly know what story you're going to tell and why only you can tell that. Is that something you would agree with?
100%. Like I don't even know how it all kind of happened, but there are definitely some genres which, like, I know certain labels will come to me for, and they'll be like, okay, like I've always loved storytellers in music, and I've always like done poetry, as you know, poetry, theater, like written books and stuff. But it's always been one of those where, like, I'd say in the past like 3 years has been the time where I'm actively putting lyrics down for people, like rather than just myself. And I think like being able to be a songwriter and being able to produce as well, and being able to like mix and master, and and yeah, just being like able to do pretty much anything audio wise is has been great. My other mate recently like said like a thing which I am going to be running with soon. He was just like, "You're like an audio stylist," and I was like, "That is exactly what I am." And I was like, yeah, audio stylist. So I'm just going to start banding that about now because I was just like, yeah, any sort of audio, boom, 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 I'll do that for you. And he was like, yeah, audio stylist. And I was like, that's great. And sometimes you need that. And I've thrown it into a few meetings now where I'm like, you could call me an audio stylist. And they're like, yeah. And you can see their eyes light up. And I'm like, this is so wild. This is just the, but people love a buzzword or a buzz phrase. They're like, let me eat that up, and I'm just like, literally a week ago, this didn't exist. Yeah, it's just like, and people have thrown it around. This is what I love as well. Like, I was in a meeting, like, like Warner, right? And they were like, "Oh, this is Danny Dirty Freud, the audio stylist," and I was like, "Audio stylist? He's thrown it around."
Well, I remember a time when you were pioneering a genre called Hoxton Sex Hop.
Oh yeah, Hoxton Sex Hop. That's what I mean. I just throw words around sometimes.
I still believe it can take off.
So do I. Hoxton Sex Hop it's just, months away from being really, really big.
Oh God. I think another part of this, I think it goes back to self-awareness, but I think that the deeper themes in who you are really important in this, in terms of finding the courage to try the new things. Because as time goes on, we all have a title. We start with a title somewhere along the way. Illustrator was mine. So then you sort of raise eyebrows and you go, I'm writing fiction over here now. But actually, it goes deeper than that. And I think it's about knowing where your personality and those broader skills and experiences can fit. I think we were both storytellers when we were starting out. I think that's kind of quite naturally what we are, partly nurture, partly nature. Then it's about having the courage to tell a story in a different genre. But like you said earlier, the courage to play and get a few things wrong and recognize that to start with, there's going to be a few learning curves. And it's about having the wisdom to not getting at the depth where you're going to completely embarrass yourself and be run out of a building. I think I still think we had a few of those moments early on when we used to put on club nights, but I think deep down we sort of had enough hunger and just about enough about us to know that we could swim in those waters and that we would learn on the job. And then it's about convincing the people to let you in to get to that starting point. But I do think that now is a time for people to really explore those deeper themes in their own personality, in their own potential skill set, and not being afraid to just shift something in a different direction and try bringing other things into it.
Absolutely. I think like for me as well, it's okay to evolve. It's okay. It's okay to be like, oh, do you know what? This is how I started. But now, like, I know that I'm going to be trying to go down this route. It's okay to try new things. And sometimes, trying something ends up being the thing which maybe you were missing. And you were like, oh, do you know what? This is the route that I didn't know that I was supposed to be going down, but I love it. And this is me now. And it's okay to have like more than one thing. Like, who says you can't have more than one thing? I think we put like limitations on ourselves sometimes. And like now I just feel like, within the realms of like of our world of possibility, we can do what we like. And I think that's key. You can do whatever you want, and like in your skill set, if that takes you into a different genre, if that takes you into a different this or that, jump on it. And I think that like people don't usually give you a shot at something if they don't think that you're probably capable of it as well. Like, if someone's just like, oh, do you know what? I think you could be really good for such and such, it's like, all right, cool. So I've been thinking about it, but maybe I needed like a second opinion. So now I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, and just another huge theme. He's just asking, asking and stepping up and demanding an opportunity sometimes, and just expressing a desire to do something. I think that there's so much that goes unsaid about that. We live in a world where everyone is just crazy busy all of the time. Like, it's a very fast-paced world out there. So it's that classic thing of, are you going to send a follow-up email because maybe it's just slipped through the cracks and it doesn't mean that they don't like what you're doing, or maybe they saw it and loved it and meant to get back to you, but again, they're just so busy that it slipped off their radar. So it's just being a bit incessant and being prepared to bother people and ask for the opportunity as well.
100%. I think sometimes it's we are on that whole idea of like, we are the main character in our own lives, so like, but that's our own lives, not everyone else. Like sometimes I'm like, why hasn't this music exec got back to me? I've literally sent him a message 3 days ago. There can't be anyone else in his email bar me, and it's just like, and then I'll throw that person, like this lady who I'm talking to at the moment. I threw her another email and she's like, Danny, I've been meaning to talk to you. Sorry, I've just been swamped. And I was just like, yes, I hear that. Rather than me being like, well, if they're not going to bother me, I'm not going to bother with them. And it's like, get a grip, mate.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The amount of times I've come close to, toys out the pram email, and it's fine. You could have at least got back to me. Whereas actually, you step off and go, let's just relax. They're probably busy. Next day, right? We'd love to get started on that project, and you're like,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't send that email.
Glad I didn't send that arsey email. Yeah, it's so easy to just like do that. But like I think that comes with age. Like there've been moments where I've been like, well, I'm not having that. But I think it's important as well, like on the flip side as well, to set the power of no. If someone's like, oh, we've got this, and we know that this would be perfect for you, and I'm like, maybe when I was 18.
Yeah.
However, like now, that's not for me. And like, and some people are like, oh, okay. But like most of the time people are like, oh, we'll have a think and see if there's something which suits you more, like suits your image more like nowadays. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Or,
absolutely. Yeah, you're just missing out on something else coming in, or like you say, yeah, just something not happening, but then someone going, but actually, have you spoke to this person?
yeah,
I also, because I've had that many a time where I've been knocked back, but then someone's kind of gone, but you should speak to X, Y, and Z because I think you'd be a really good fit. And then it's just the ongoing weave.
absolutely. Like at the moment, I'm trying to weasel my way back into like wrestling and like doing stuff for wrestling, and yeah, like I've been going to like a lot of like the indie circuits, as you know, like I love that stuff. So like so I've been doing like a lot of indie stuff, and recently I met this guy and like we were just chatting, and his name's Ash, and he like films for AEW, New Japan, and like and a lot of like local ones as well. And I was like, I would love to like write some music for like, entrance music. And he was just like, I actually know a few wrestlers who are looking for that. And like gave me their IGs. And like so I've just been having a back and forth on like Instagram with them. And I've just been like,
Wow,
beautiful. Just like
that'd be a gig, wouldn't it? Wrestling
yeah.
theme music. Oh, it'd be a hell of a gig.
That's what I played, and I was just like, and like we're just chatting, and I'm just like, oh, what music are you into? I've been looking at your character. Are you still gonna be like a face, or are you turning heel? And one of them at the moment's like, oh, I'm actually gonna be turning heel soon. And I'm like, maybe we should write something a bit darker then for that heel turn. And he's like, yeah. And I'm just like, this is all I want to be doing. I just want to be doing
So good.
these sort of stuff. This sort
What
of
would you
stuff.
what would you do if you got an email and it's like, right, this is this is an NDA, but Chris Jericho's coming back to WWE and
Oh
we
my
need
lord.
Eric.
I'd go wild. Like I'd be like, well, we're gonna have to have a few face to faces.
Amazing.
Face to faces just so I can read the room, and see where we're going. But yeah, like it's one of those now where I'm like, and I've had some really good conversations, and but again, like people, like I think people understand the hustle, understand what we're trying to do creatively, so that a lot of people, more times than not, I feel so far my experience has been they're up for helping. If you're like, oh, like show a passion for something, or you just like want some advice, like, you know, Progress on Wrestling. They were one of the first people who I spoke to about this, and they were like, "Hey, Daddy, we can't help you ourselves. However, like maybe you should look at reaching out to like people on their like personal platforms and seeing what's up." And I was like, "Beautiful," you know, and that plays into a lot of what you were saying. People will happily be like, "Oh, do you know?" Especially if it's like if you're having like a nice conversation anyway, they'll happily be like, "Oh, we can't help you. However, you should check out these people doing this, and this." And you know, and a lot of it's crazy, but a lot of like wrestlers, especially on the indie circuit, they don't have their own music. And I was like, this is so crazy. I thought that was your own tune, and it was like, nah, it's something that I found off the internet. I'm like, oh my goodness.
At the end of the day, you're trying to help people, and that's
Yeah.
what we do. That's how you have to frame what we're doing here as creators. You have to think, who can I help? Who's the best? Who's going to get the most help from what I do? How can I connect with those people? And then it's about, like you say, having a very human conversation and not going in, too salesy. It's about being able to distill what you do and put that across in the right way that works for your personality. And that's it. And I always remember, again, to keep it on the wrestling theme, when I first started working with Dave Hilton at WWE. He said, "Look, I get contacted by hundreds of people a week wanting to do artwork for WWE, but he's like, you were persistent. You communicated your knowledge and your love of the brand. That was music to my ears, because we don't always have the time to be educating everybody about the storylines." And it was just this lovely reminder that actually, even though it's like a dream client and it might feel a bit out of reach or on a pedestal, people need our help, in what you're doing. And if you just put that across and express your knowledge and your willingness to do it, then that can be enough.
Exactly, and it's great when that stuff happens, and I think when it does happen, when it does come true, you can just really run with it. Like I've had a few moments when I've worked with Arsenal, and then like when you started working with Arsenal as well, I was like, oh, that's another way in. So I ended up doing more stuff with Arsenal, and I'm like, this is beautiful, this is great.
Yeah.
And it was like at a time where Wenger was there, but now like I've still got this picture where like Arteta was the club captain and now he's the manager. So I'm like, this is beautiful. And it's just like those little moments where you can, as you said, like when you can show the passion, the knowledge, and people like they dig it.
Well, exactly. I mean, to flip that, it's like thanks to you that this podcast is on British Airways, and it's like that's very cool also. And I think that it goes back to something you said to me in a personal call a little while ago, where you said that we're not looking after each other enough, as the we being the broader industry, at this kind of cutthroat time where so many people are struggling, and there's economic hardship, and there's fear, and there's change in markets, and you name it, it's going on. And you're right. I actually think it's a time where we have to come together in our networks and our communities. And actually, we do have to look out for each other as creators, because it's pretty plain to see in policies around AI that others are not looking out for us.
Exactly, for sure. People, yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I always feel like that, especially like, I get a bunch of emails usually from like new producers as well, who are like, "Hey, I'm a new producer. Have you got time to like give me some advice?" And I'm like, 100%. 100%. Like, what do you want to know? And it's never an issue for me to be like, maybe get in touch with this person. Here's their email. I'll forward you in, see what happens. And, and I think a couple of them have like been able to push on since then, but it's just like giving someone an email isn't the end of the world. They're not, it's not, they're going to steal my job. It's not, come on. There's enough of the pie for everyone. Come on.
Exactly. And pulling the ladder up is not, it's not the way to do it. And but even to that point, sometimes I get those queries semi-regularly still from students and the likes. And now my new tactic, because I'm a little more time poor being a parent, I voice note them. I say, if you're comfortable giving me a number, give me a number, because you'll be waiting weeks and you'll have to chase me up if it's an email. But if you give me a number, next time I'm on the dog walk, I'll drop you a 3-minute rambling voice note and you can pick the bones out of it. There are ways to do it that make it kind of your schedule.
Exactly, and few people recently like have been like, oh, I've just seen on your Instagram that you're going to be in Huddersfield recording. Would it be okay if I buy you a coffee? And I'm like, yeah, 100%,
Nice.
100%. I've never been a villain though. I've never been like, well, I will have a coffee and breakfast. I've always been like, yeah, that's sweet, that's sweet. I've never been a villain, but maybe one day I will. Who knows?
As you well know, I've come across
Yeah, yeah.
her on that one.
That's what I mean. I just don't. I know people who do that as well, though, who are just like, oh yeah, of course we'll meet, and then suddenly they're just like, suddenly they've got a breakfast in their hand, and you're like, whoa, what's happened here? I said a coffee, and it's like, nah, this is a porridge as well, my friend.
Fantastic. Well, as a man of many operations, where is the best place for people to connect with you these days?
Usually just on Instagram, or IG. That's pretty much like the best place, or just reach out on those sort of platforms. So it's at Dirty Freud. That is my handle on everything, and yeah, I'm easy to chat to, and just tell me what's happening.
Awesome. Well, it's been lovely to check in, and yeah, no, it's been good to pick your brains on all of the craziness that's going on in your world.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Big thank you to Dirty Freud for taking the time out of a hectic schedule, making operas, recording electronic, jazz, producing hip-hop albums, writing for you-know-who, touring. It's a busy boy. And I hope you got something out of that about variation and evolving our creative careers. I did want to say, like we mentioned on the show, I don't think it's a necessity. I think if you're going to specialise, you have to be incredibly human about what you do and really tap into your story for that to remain automation proof / interesting. I think that the feeling based stuff is what conjures feelings in others. That's a human constant. I think when we're creative, when we do it with other people, we are tapping into the whole, where we're creating something that's, in a way that is bigger than us. I think creativity is a borderline spiritual pursuit. I would go that far. But anyway, I hope you got something from that conversation. If you do want to coach with me one-to-one, you can take a look at all the info for that at thecreativecondition.com/coach. I've been loving doing that the last couple of years. Learning all the time. So get in touch if you're stuck, if you're at a crossroads, if you need a lift, if you need an outside perspective, whether that's writing a talk, a book, a story, or just doing the big deep dive pit stop session or something smaller, a series of sessions maybe to help you get to where you need to go, then get in touch is what I love to do. And you can do that at thecreativecondition.com/coach. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, Illustration X. You can check out a global range of illustration and animation portfolios now at illustrationx.com, and also take a look at the Ukrainian Institute at ui.org.ua. Fantastic organisation supporting the creative community in Ukraine, and they really need it at this time of war. So that's it. Coming back soon with more guests, more solo podcasts. Let me know what you want from the show. I want audience feedback. What do you need more of? I will take it under consideration. Cheers, guys. Have an awesome week. Chat soon.